In the last episode on our very unique 20th anniversary Macintosh, we upgraded the stock early PowerPC processor to a blazing fast G3, along with some other ridiculous upgrades like booting this thing from a SATA SSD and using a super drive from an Intel Mac Pro. But today, we're taking things to an extreme with a processor swap that would have blown minds back in 1997. We've taken this incredibly rare Sonic Crescendo CPU upgrade card and swapped out its G3 for a pin-compatible G4. If this works with all the other upgrades in this thing, I think we might just have the world's most powerful 20th anniversary Macintosh. So stay tuned. And if you enjoy pushing the boundaries of personal computing 20 years after the fact, I hope you'll consider subscribing to the channel. I've got some builds lined up to take even older machines even faster than this thing, so it's definitely worth sticking around. So let's talk TAM. If this is your first time seeing this machine, you might be wondering why it looks a little different to a standard TAM. Make sure you check out the start of our series right here, but basically we restored this goofball bit of 90s wild stab-in-the-dark Apple engineering and combined it with parts from a dead PowerBook, because a lot of this machine was designed using off-the-shelf PowerBook parts. The original speaker cloth was heavily stained and ripped, so we replaced it with this darker cloth, which is more in line with the original TAM designs anyway, as opposed to the Dad's Cargo Shorts beige that it eventually shipped with. I think this thing looks and functions amazing now. The screen is bright and crisp and basically brand new, and the keyboard feels great now. But the icing on the cake was the incredibly hard to find Sonic Crescendo G3 CPU upgrade card that we put in this thing, which goes in its cache slot and overrides the processor from there. But I'm still not satisfied here. Everything we've done so far is mostly hacking or flashing off-the-shelf retail components to somewhat comically work in this bizarre 90s Macintosh. What if we go a little more bespoke? It just so happens that the original G4 processors were pin-compatible with the G3 processors. I mean, the G4 is basically just a G3 with the addition of AltiVec, or Velocity Engine as Apple decided to call it. So even though there was never actually a G4 upgrade released for the TAM or any of the other Gazelle-based Macintoshes, we can probably create one by simply desoldering the G3 on our upgrade card and replacing it with a pin-compatible G4, and theoretically, it should just work with the original Sonnet driver and everything. But how does one remove a soldered-on CPU? Well, I'll tell you, right after this word about today's sponsor, PCBWay. In fact, I recently printed out a couple of boards with PCBWay in this lovely white solder mask here for some future shenanigans. And if you think you know what these are for, let me know in the comments down below. By the way, it's also PCBWay's 5th annual PCB design contest, where you can submit your own creations for a bunch of really cool prizes. I hope you give PCBWay.com a try. So, I do not have anywhere near the skills, steady hand, or equipment required to do BGA soldering or rework, which is what you need to replace soldered-on CPUs like the one on this card. Now, what is BGA? Well, allow me to illustrate with this 68040 processor. Back in the day, most CPUs used a bunch of pins on the bottom so you could stick it into a socket really easily and pretty easily remove it as well. But manufacturers realized that they could save a lot of space and probably be a little more efficient by eliminating the pins and sockets and just soldering the CPU directly to the board. For example, here's the original G3 CPU from the Sonnet accelerator. Instead of pins, there would be little balls of solder on these solder pads, hence the name ball grid array. And you need specialized equipment to work on this stuff because Basically, you have to line up all of those little solder balls to the array of pins on the back of the chip and solder them all at once. So I was browsing the 68K MLA as one does, and I came across a thread with another TAM owner showing a TAM boot screen with a G4 upgrade logo on it. And I was like, come to find out, it's our old friend Herd, who has done a CPU swap on a Sonnet upgrade card for someone's TAM. The same kind of upgrade card that I just so happen to have in my TAM. You might remember Herd from other incredible processor swaps on this channel, such as our 2 GHz G4 Cube. Well, after a brief chat, I sent out my 400 MHz Sonnet G3, and it came back with a G4 rated for 500 MHz. But the thing is, Herd doesn't actually have a machine to test this upgrade in. So today, you and I are going to stick this in the TAM untested and see what happens. Oh God. Okay, before we toss this in the machine, let's take a quick gander at exactly what was done to this card. So we can remove this lovely purple heatsink here with 4 tiny screws. And check it out. There is our G4 7400 that Herd has BGA soldered to this board. And Herd also very kindly machined down the heatsink here, which is why it's, yeah, you can see the purple paint is kind of worn away here. And yeah, that was just to make sure that this fit over the slightly taller G4 processor without crushing the die. So let me reapply some thermal compound and we'll stick this in the TAM. Oh, and check this out. Even after all of these wacky mods, the fat back still fits on just fine. Anyway, let's crack her open. All right, so we'll remove this riser card here, the fan. Here is the cache card. And in goes our Sonnet G4. That's so incredible. I cannot believe it. There we go. G4 TAM, hopefully. Now, a couple other things I want to do here. I have this 2-port USB card in here with the SIG chipset that works great in the TAM. But I got a beefier 5-port card with the same chipset, which should work just as well. And I like this because, well, 2 reasons. One, I can take the USB Ethernet adapter, plug it in here, and just run the Ethernet cable out the side of the machine, which is much cleaner. But 2, I'm really worried about cooling on this G4, so I had an idea, and this card worked out perfectly for it. This right here is the original front PCI cover for this USB card, but I've used my gigantic Hulk hands to bend it into this shape here. And what this is a clip for the fan that can hold it at kind of an angle here. And yeah, this will screw in to the bottom of the card here and provide 2 functions. One, it's going to pull in air kind of from the opening here and send it across the card because there is almost no clearance between the heatsink on the card and the RAM chips below it. So I definitely want cooling there. And the second thing it does, actually, when we put the back cover on, this is stuck up against the cover itself because it slants inward, which takes pressure off of this PCI slot up here and makes sure that, you know, we're not going to rip it out of the computer. Now, the big question, of course, is will the back still fit on? I don't know. Let's give it a try. we're on. Look at that. The back fits. And I can see the fan right there. Gonna draw in air from the outside. This is exciting. All right, so here is our full ridiculous TAM setup. Let's boot up that G4. All right, it chimed. That's a good sign. It's taking its sweet time. Light came on, and screen. Oh my God, there it is. Look, it detected the G4. It says Crescendo G4. Oh my God. This is a G4 TAM. All right, Apple System Profiler. There it is, PowerPC G4 running at the original G3's 400 megahertz. Oh, and yeah. If you remember, I said that this G4 is capable of 500 megahertz, and we do have a way to eke it up even faster without actually doing any hardware shenanigans. But before we try and overclock it, let's run some 400 megahertz benchmarks. Actually, this is a little surprising already. The baseline system is a PowerMac G3 300, and we're like 25-ish% slower than that with a 400 megahertz G4. That's weird, but of course the PowerMac is a different, much more modern architecture. Huh. Okay, let's open the G3 test. Well, evidently, we are slightly faster than the G3 at the same clock speed. I mean, I guess that makes sense because, again, the G4 is basically the same thing as the G3, just with some added stuff. I want to do something else, and I think this is going to make a big difference. So let me save this. And I have a very special application in here. And it is called Sonic Clocker. And what this does is allow us to open up the Sonnet extension, which has the math for the clock speed, and change the multiplier in software. So extension speed we set to the current CPU speed of 400 megahertz. And then we can up it. So let's choose 450 and save. And we'll just put a space there so it loads first, and then we'll move the old extension out of the extensions folder. Yeah, here's the stock extension. Put this just into the system. No, put this in here so that it doesn't load. And then let's restart and see if it freezes. Well, that doesn't make any sense. It says machine speed 544 megahertz. Oh, okay. Well, the magic in the Sonnet processor might be interacting strangely with the G4, or maybe just the system profiler isn't accurate in this case. Yeah, it says about 544 megahertz. All right, if you say so. Let's run the benchmarks again. All right, let's set TAM G3 as the baseline. Yeah, so 6% faster in processor performance and 15 in floating point for some reason. All right, bus speed 50. The extension speed, that's going to be the default because I'm starting from the stock extension again. Target speed 475. 544 again. All right. I guess benchmark time. All right, well, apparently we did score the same, so I guess we are running at the same speed despite clocking it higher in the tool. All right. There's only one setting left in the tool. All right. Extension speed 400 stock, target speed 500. Nope, it froze. Okay, we're booted with extensions off, which means that we are running the stock 603 EV at 250 megahertz, and this really shows you just how much slower the TAM is unupgraded. Look at that. We can watch it redrawing these macOS 9.1 windows. But let's take the Sonnet 500 out. We'll put 475 back in. And that should work. Okay, well, now it says we're running at the still kind of improbable 513 megahertz. I'll take your word for it, Apple System Profiler. But you know what's most important, at least to me, and that is games. So I'm going to start off with Wolfenstein 3D, which of course is no problem at all for a 513 megahertz G4 processor, but I want to play this just to make sure that everything's working, and also to try out my new ADB gamepad, the SFX Plus. Okay, so I have the gamepad configured, which it configures as a keyboard here. So yeah, let's play. Oh yes. Oh, it's awesome. Haha. Oh, not the easiest to control. I'm sure I could get used to it. And it froze. Okay, so apparently my brain needs a processor upgrade because I went through all that trouble to mount a Noctua fan pointing at the Sonnet upgrade, and I forgot to plug it in, so maybe that freeze was heat related. Let's try this again. All right. Playing with my sweet gamepad. It's kind of hard to run in a straight line with this thing. Park and see. Oh crap. This gamepad is not exactly precise. Yeah, but check it out. No freeze yet. That fan makes all the difference, I guess. All right, I decided to go a little bit further with the fan situation. Let me show you what I did. And check it out. It all still fits under this back cover here. Yeah, I found another small little Noctua fan here. And yeah, so now I have things blowing this way and venting out that hole instead of drawing air in. And I'm hoping this is going to give much better coverage over the heatsink of the upgrade, because again, the heatsink is almost touching the chips on this top stick of RAM here. I think this works great, and especially when this back cover is on, it really gives the air just a straight shot across that upgrade. So I've been running this thing for hours like this, browsing the internet, downloading stuff from Macintosh Garden. Yeah, I can feel the airflow over this even without the cover on. And yeah, in all the hours I've been using this today after putting these fans in here, haven't had a single crash. So yeah, that is really exciting and probably a little bit hilarious. Especially since it all fits and snaps under the back case. Okay, so I do have a few more somewhat ridiculous plans for this TAM. Specifically, I have heard that you can pass through the G4 upgrade to Linux. So perhaps a dual booting TAM? Oh, but then again, someone on Twitter showed me their TAM running BOS. So hey, what do you think about a triple booting G4 20th anniversary Mac? If you'd like to see that, or if you think that's a terrible idea, either way, let me know in the comments down below. But that'll do it for this video. I'm so excited that we got this G4 TAM working, and it is now the ultimate super bassy Wolfenstein 3D machine. So if you enjoyed this video, I'd appreciate a thumbs up, and if you'd like to see more TAM shenanigans like this, please subscribe down below, and thank you very much for watching. And a special thanks to Camilla Noseda, Chris Allegretta, Chris Biggs, Chris Calderon, Chris Nelson, Cobalt Retrotech, Control-Alt-Reese, Daniel Hubbard, Dwight A. Spencer, Greg from Rutk Mods, Paul Spencer, Ryan, Scott Thompson, and Sutek, who are my highest tiered patrons and all of my Patreon supporters for helping to make these videos possible.